Hey, what's going on? Ryan here, setfacetriathlon.com, and we're going to hook you up with my rendition. It's kind of a review slash recap my experience at 70.3 Memphis. Just pointing it out there, I've done the videos on all getting ready for the race and leading up to the race, and did the race this past weekend. Got the medal to prove it, and my stats are out there. Got the hat to prove it. But I want to kind of go back and revisit some things that I put out there to see if it kind of held true. We're going to go my actual one-on-one experience. I was there in person, did the whole race, did the warm-up swim, did all the things, the check-in. And I just want to kind of go over the race, my experience, and hopefully put anything out there to help you do the race and if you choose to do it in the future. I'll get to the punch, beat you to the punch, into the line, whatever you want to call it. I think it was a great event. I think the course was great. I definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you're gonna do it, and you're on the fence, I'd highly recommend it. I think it was well organized and well put on. But we're gonna dive into what actually happened because it was a very interesting day. If you didn't see the posts about race day, it basically rained all day except for I think it stopped around 1:30. Stopped raining maybe 1 o'clock, and kind of dried up. But that rain all throughout the evening, the day before, the evening, and the morning of, basically caused quite a problem in general. So I know you can see, we're going to go through my Garmin Connect information so you can see how slow or fast or whatever I am. And then we're just going to go through that information so you can see elevation profiles, all kinds of other fun things that I actually got off my Garmin because there's always a disparage or difference between what's reported on the Ironman site versus what people actually get in person. So I'm just going to give you what I got. Use my Phoenix 6. Right now, as far as I know, it's calibrated correctly for elevation gain. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. So basically, I went to Memphis. I drove down on Thursday. The race is on a Saturday, and I went it all day Friday to get my check-in, do the practice swim, just to swim in the Shelby Farms Park, and then to get my bike checked in and get everything done and get settled, and then do the race on Saturday. And I drove home. It was 8 hour drive, which I highly don't recommend. But I just want to get back to the family and everything and have Sunday to kind of recover. But so we'll kind of jump into it. I got in, and on Thursday, I did check in real quick. They were open till 7, which is kind of nice. So you roll in to the park. Let me see if I can pull up a picture. We'll get into the transition. We'll get into that. Well, unfortunately, I didn't have a good shot of the park. I think I do. Bear with me as I go through and find the shot of check-in area. So it's kind of nice because there's this kind of amphitheater area that you can see. It's a real nice space that is set up for gathering. So it's not like they have to find a field somewhere and stick stuff in there. They've got all the things they need. They got all the power and everything, and they set up the tents and everything. So check out on Thursday was great. It was overcast. It wasn't too warm. It was pretty good. T-shirt, pair of shorts, and you're pretty good to go. Definitely pay attention to parking. I've done several posts on where to park. Probably the best place is where they have the expo parking. Race day, you can't park there, but the expo parking is a lot closer. You don't have to hike as far unless you park at the race day parking, which is almost like a mile away or something like that. So anyway, drove in Thursday night, got in there about 6 o'clock, 6:30, did my check-in, got all that stuff done, got my wristband, got my swim cap, timing chip, and all that stuff. You need your timing chip and swim cap. You don't really need a swim cap. They had some there, but you need your timing chip in order to do the practice swim. They just want to make sure they account for people going in and out of the water. So I went there and got that done. So just to make sure that I can get in the water. And I brought my wetsuit because if you look and pull it up, they had a sign. It was 76.3 degrees for the practice swim. So we're crossing our fingers that it was going to cool down. It was actually sunny in the morning. And it got warm enough, and it didn't really dip cool, even though it rained. It was about 77 degrees on race day, so it was wetsuit optional, but not legal. So just be prepared for that. That even though it was October, 2nd, that it could be cool, warm enough that it's not wetsuit legal. Now they did have the wetsuit people start at the back, and people have to wear their wetsuits, so that's not a big deal. To me, the water was actually kind of chilly. I had a swim skin. I started getting in, and it felt like it was cold, and I actually stopped for a minute, and I thought I hadn't zipped up my swim skin, and it was zipped up and ready to go. It was just kind of chilly, but just be ready for that. Um, I'd highly recommend the practice swim. It was nice to get out there. They set up a 500-meter out and back for a total of 1,000 meters. You go out there and swim it, and as much as you want. They had it open from 8 to 10. It was a beautiful morning to do it. I mean, the area was great. Over here, you can see in the distance, this is Ironman Village. So if you park by Expo up here, all you had to do is walk down the sidewalk, and boom, there you are. Now, if you parked in athlete parking like I did, you're going to walk way over here. It's like a mile and a half, 2 miles or something crazy. So it took me a minute to walk over here. But I got my practice swimming just fine. It was no big deal. Plenty of area that had a little place to set up if you brought bags or something like that. You could kind of put it up out of the way so people weren't rifling through it necessarily when just hanging out in the open. So I'd definitely highly recommend getting there and doing the practice swim on Thursday morning, or Friday morning, but you have to check in Thursday afternoon in order to do that. So that's my experience doing the practice swim. So while I was there, I did take a picture. This is like in the middle of the park. So if we go to the swim course, so there's this little point. So that's where I sat and kind of took a picture because you can see straight down all the way to the swim car over here. And then there's this little kind of nook and cranny over here. So that's why I took a picture of this. So this is looking at the swim finish. So you can swim down here and you come back and there's just like a little landing over here that you come up on. So it's kind of nice because you swim right by this and there's a bunch of people there while you're swimming by. But it is kind of the swim practice was good because when you're swimming back to the swim start area, when you have to make this turn and come back, you would be having that sun. So we swam out here, swam a little bit past the stage, and then swam back. So if the sun pops up and you're swimming back towards the start, the sun is in your face, and it was blinding. I couldn't see the buoys. I could barely see the kayakers. So that was good practice. That if race day, if that sun had popped out while you're doing the swim, while you're swimming back, it might have been a problem. But on race day, we'll get into it. Wasn't a problem because it wasn't very sunny. So that is the make sure you saw it. The swim photo, nice, glass surface water. There's really no waves unless the jet skis were running around or kayakers or anything. It is murky, so you're not going to be able to see the bottom. But at the end of the day, all you got to do is swim through it. Bring swim goggles and earplugs or whatever you got, and you'll be good to go. I did take a picture. We'll kind of go over this for the race. This is the end of transition, kind of over by Ironman Village. This is all uphill, so it rained a lot on race morning. So when I came back in, this is where the bike in is, and you're running your bike through transition. There's a nice little sidewalk through it. It was a river coming through transition. All of these rack spots were just flooded, and it was like a river coming down the sidewalk. Basically, you got assigned your rack spot when you checked in because of the COVID protocols and everything. They don't assign bib numbers before. So you pretty much, wherever you showed up, you don't really have any control. It's just that's the number in the order you are. And if you're at the bottom here, your stuff was just inundated with water. Stuff wasn't necessarily floating away, but it was pretty wet, pretty covered in water. So this is a lesson learned. If it is going to rain, and you're in Tennessee, and it kind of rains quite a bit around there, especially this time of year, just be prepared. Bring people have like monster oversized Ziploc bags to put everything in. And that might be a smart move. Just make sure that your stuff is situated in a way that it's not just sprawled out everywhere. And if it does rain, I put my food, my nutrition, anything I wanted inside my bike shoes and inside my run shoes. Basically, nothing was just sitting out that could have been like washed away because seriously, it was kind of deep at times. So that this is after the practice swim. Friday was a beautiful day. The sun came out; it made it a little bit warm. I did an athlete briefing. I posted that. But the grass is this nice zoysia grass. It's not very high, it's not very thick, and it just covers. But when it gets wet, it gets soupy and muddy. But Friday before the race was perfect. It was beautiful. It was all set up. Now this is the transition area. This is the downside of it. This is the bike in area. And up the hill is the bike out and around. I would pull up photos for that, but right now Facebook is down and I can't get the photos off for you guys. So unfortunately, I won't post those, but I post them all over the Facebook pages. I post them all over the my Instagram and everything. So follow me on there. You can see all the photos of everything. So let's just jump into it. So when you have to come here, let's pull up. Follow me here, athletes. Let's do the athlete guide. Because why am I pulling this up? Because everything's in the athlete guide. Even an athlete briefing, they said 95% of what you need to know is in the athlete guide. And what I want to do is pull up the parking map. Because I think this is a key crucial point. This will set you up for check-in success and race day success if you are prepared for all this information. Pull it down. Here we go. Parking map. So this little spot right here is the finish line. Over here is the transition area. This isn't like too far apart. It looks far apart in this map, but it's not. Park over here for expo and check-in parking and practice swim because you're right here to everything. I made a mistake on practice swim day parking over here, but it was kind of good to figure out how far it's going to take to walk over here because you have to park over here no matter what. And there's one little road coming in. They brought us in and then took us on this little road through here. It's a little gravel road, and then tried to park us all here. Now, what I didn't have the picture for it to show you was since it rained in the morning, so parking us was a problem. So they had to delay the start, and they say it's because of the weather conditions. It was not a storm; it was just heavy rain. They had to stop it because people had to park along the outside roads. It's Walnut Grove Road, Farm Road. They parked them along the gravel road. They could not park them anymore in these fields. People were getting stuck. Luckily, I have a four-wheel drive truck. I got parked. I wasn't a problem. There's cars that could not get to their spots. So they got so far down the road. I got in about 4:45. Transition opened at 5 o'clock. And I was still in these first couple rows. Luckily, I was able to get parked, and I walked up to transition, didn't have a problem, got there right as they opened up. Wasn't a problem. But if you are not an early bird and you try to get there right as transition is opening up, you were stuck on Walnut Grove Road. There's cars parked along here. There's like a parking lot field type of thing across the street. They parked people. It was a mess. They delayed the race start for 30 minutes, basically, to get people parked and let them in because they could not park them in this field. It just became, if there's going to be weather or if it has rained, that field is not usable for parking. Luckily, there's people after the race with Jeeps and stuff. They're towing people out. It was nice. I didn't have a problem getting out, fortunately, but if it does rain, just be ready. That field's not going to be usable. And I always tell people I preach, show up early. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't think, oh, well, I've got until 6:45 when transition closes. I'll just show up at like 5:30. If you'd have showed up at 5:30, you've been sitting in your car for 45 minutes. So that, people, sometimes I get mocked for showing up a little bit earlier in the race and being the first one in the parking lot sometimes. But it pays off because I got the transition, unpacked everything, found a spot, a covered area to sit out and hang out while it's raining. Everybody else is stressing out and I'm not getting in here to get set up. So that's my 2 cents. Show up as soon as transition opens. That's probably when you should target trying to get there. Especially if you don't know how long it's going to take you necessary from where you stayed, and there's going to be traffic. If it's raining, give yourself some time because you're going to need it. So we're going to jump into the race. So the swim start was over here. So you swim this nice straight line, and then it gets a little questionable when you go through this turn. And actually, we're on the left side of the buoy, so this map isn't entirely accurate per se. Then you come up this little boat ramp, and then you run over to transition. So we'll go with my experience. So for whatever reason on the Garmin map, it doesn't show water over here, but I guarantee you I was swimming in water. As you can see, it's not exactly the straightest of lines, and I don't think I swam that far in of the line. So I'm going to say GPS is probably off a little bit. But at this point where you come on this the last little turn here, where it's a sharp turn, at that point, that's where it got congested. Over here, there's plenty of space, plenty of area to move out. They started with 4 of us at a time every 5 seconds, had a nice beeper for us. People lined up on the sidewalks. It was nice and orderly. But once you got here, everybody kind of funneled up just because you're swimming in this little area here, and they don't have you like pushed up next to the shore, but it becomes more narrow and people are bunched up swimming those buoy lines, and it was just kind of congested. There's people, one guy that he was the most violent swimmer I've ever seen, and for whatever reason, I just could not get around him. So it was just playing, I guess, tag with him. Sometimes he kicked me, and sometimes he hit me, and I tried to swim away from him. Somehow he kept up. But luckily, it was overcast. It was raining, so there was no sun in our face to stop us from coming into the finish line. I will say it's trying to sight in the buoys. When you make one buoy, there's a few times I kind of had to dog paddle a little bit and look around and see where I was at. I couldn't do my straight sighting to find the buoy, and once I found it, it was fine. But just be aware of that the buoys over here, it seemed like they're spaced pretty far apart, and it was kind of difficult at times to make sure that you're swimming. Luckily they were different colors on each side, so you didn't sight to a yellow buoy on the back side. You sighted to an orange buoy. So there are sometimes I was a little about it, but you do have to swim to the left of this red buoy. So there's a kayak over here yelling at people to go to the left or to the right of the buoy. So you have to have the buoy on your left, and you swim to the right of the buoy and keep all the buoys on your right or on your left when you're swimming in. You're on the right of the buoy. So that's the only difference. You kind of have to keep that in your mind once you're swimming in there. But water was smooth. There were some waves just from jet skis running around. But really, it was pretty laid back. Like I said, I didn't really have a problem with congestion until I got to this first turn buoy, and after that, it was just pretty crowded. And it wasn't horrible. 70.3 Des Moines in Grays Lake, I'd call that a little more congested for some reason. But this one, it seemed like this little straightaway gave us a chance to all kind of spread out and find our zones and our pacing and stuff. And I lined up pretty honest to where I thought my swim seating was. So, but really, nothing really crazy on the swim. You can see my time, 37 minutes, so I'm not the most fastest swimmers. Like I said, it was wetsuit optional. I went with a swim skin, so I am a little bit slow on my swim skin, but you can kind of see my pace at the end here. It just kind of went all over the place just because I was sighting, trying to see where I was going. It just, like I said, there's kind of a violent swimmer guy beside me the whole time, and it was just kind of hectic there. But other than that, a few little times I had to kind of stop and sight and make sure I knew where I was going. But overall, like I said, I wouldn't say there's anything spectacular about the swim, good or negative. It was just, it's a swim, it's good, and we got it done. Price of admission for doing a triathlon. Problem was when you make this run to transition, it's all on paved concrete that's like these little pebbles sticking up. So the first 100 yards were okay, but once you get to a certain point, it started hurting my feet. And luckily, you switch over to grass when you got to close to transition. Luckily, I was in the kind of the start of the group. Um, Later on, because it was wet and saturated, that grass turned into mud. So by the time most people got to their bikes, feet were covered in mud, had mud all over them. I mean, luckily it rained enough on the bike and just washed you off. But so something to keep in mind that you're going to have to run along sidewalks and kind of cobblestone, pea gravel, concrete paved little trail here. So just be ready for that. If you got problems with your feet on hard surfaces, that might kind of cause a problem. But just be aware. It was about a half mile of a little run along the sidewalk. So it was nice. There's plenty of spectators and everything like that, and stretch it out. But you had to run all the way down to the end of transition, and then come back up to the side, and then you run in and get your bike and stuff. So it was a little bit long ways around, but it is what it is. So, like I said, nothing really to write home about on that. The bike. Um, what can I say about the bike? It rained the entire time. I know that's, there's no guarantee it's going to happen or not happen to you when you're out there. There's nothing really to be said about it, but it poured. So I will say that for the most part, the road conditions were pretty good because there's a few spots that were puddles, and I hit a pothole and thought it was questionable there for a minute. But for the most part, with the rain and everything, the road surfaces were in good enough condition that it wasn't a huge problem. There are some intersections that it rained so hard that it was like washing up out of the ditches and everything onto the road. It rained that hard at certain points. So there were some times where it was just kind of a pain in the butt. But, what are you going to do? It's going to rain, and you either do the race or you don't. So basically the entire time it rained, except for it did rain the entire time. There's like maybe on this back stretch where maybe for like 10 minutes or something like that, it didn't rain. And then it just picked up. And especially towards the end, it poured. I mean, let's say the last 10 miles or something like that, it just poured on us. So, I can't say it's going to happen every year, but I had my visor on my helmet that kept the rain from like getting in my eyes. You need some sort of eye protection because if you're going 20 miles per hour and the rain's hitting you, you're just stinging and it's not fun. You do share the roads for the kind of the country area. Once you get out of town, you're kind of, once you get past this line, this big loop out here, kind of looks like the state of Texas. But once you get out there, you're in more country setting, so the roads are a little bit more narrow, and there's some sections you're going through some of these little neighborhoods, and it's kind of paved over chip seal. I don't know, but it was, I would say 75-80% were great roads, and then the rest were okay. I wouldn't call any of them horrible. You look at the elevation profile, so you're climbing a little bit to come out, but the nice thing is you get to go back down because you hit the same little section, get back into the transition area. Now, and ignore my heart rate, my sensor was not working because it was raining, and I had to cinch it up a little bit in order to get that somewhat accurate. I was going to look at the training effect, the timing, distance, lap segment, what's the elevation profile? While I've got this recording, elevation. So total descent, 3,500 feet of gain, but you look at the bike map and 1,800 feet. So, it it's almost double what I got off of my Garmin. So you kind of have to, I guess, take that with a grain of salt. It didn't feel like, I live in Kansas City and we have rolling hills, and that's mostly what it is out there. There's nothing killers. There's nice little straightaways. There's a few little, get out of your seat and climb, but it wasn't very steep, very long. So it wasn't a huge, issue per se. But it is kind of you look at 3,500 feet and you look at their map and you got 1,800 feet of gain. So it didn't feel like 3,500 feet. So, like I said, there's always, it looks like my Garmin stayed pretty accurate for the most part. But maybe if we did distance, and I'll look at that on my watch. I know this is exciting information. See if my watch has that information on it. Like I said, I mean, it rained the entire time, so I was not as aggressive as I typically would be, especially going down hills. I just kind of coasted most of them, and I didn't want to. I wanted to be on two wheels the entire time. I didn't want to take a wipeout, or it was raining so bad. There's very deep puddles. I didn't want to hydroplane. So you just kind of have to be careful out there, especially if it's raining and stuff like that. Here we go. Ascent, yeah, 3,500 feet. That's what I got on my watch. So, I mean, you look at the elevation profile, nothing really stands out and looks too wacky or anything like that. So, a single loop, 56 miles, when you look at their map versus ours, 1,800 feet of gain, and Garmin comes back with 3,500. So, take that for what you will. This is what my watch gave. I didn't feel like it was 3,500 feet of elevation gain. There was no real huge steep climbs, and I'm not a huge fan. Like, I've done 70.3 Chattanooga, and I wouldn't say it's any more drastic than that. And I've done 70.3 Muncie, which is flat as a pancake, and it was a little bit more than that. I've done 70.3 Kansas, which we had 3,500 feet of elevation gain on there, and you could feel that. Now this course, it didn't feel like that. So this one is kind of rolling hills, and I think some good opportunities to go fast if you want to get a really good time. But like I said, for me personally, I'd kind of, I guess, wimped out a little bit going down the hills and over things that look kind of questionable. If it was covered in rain, it looked like there could be a pothole or something. I was picking different lines. You couldn't ride the nice smooth line where the cars have made the kind of the tire ruts, because that's where all the rain was. So I kind of had to ride lines that weren't exactly optimal. I deflated my tires a little bit to give me more traction. So, take it with a grain of salt. I think it could be a good, nice, solid, quick course. Definitely nothing extreme or anything like that. But for me personally, um, just the rain just kind of hosed it for me. The aid stations were good. There's really nothing else that stood out. It was just it rained the entire time. So that's the biggest, standout for me. But the other standout is when you get back into the transition area. Getting out, luckily, like I said, I was kind of towards the beginning, so the bike out area wasn't too muddy. I did forget to take off my swim skin on the lower half, so I had to prop my bike up. I took the swim skin off and I chucked it over to the side of the fence. Luckily, it was still there after the race, so I wasn't out of swim skin. But um, I carried my bike past the mud and the slop because I didn't want to get mud all over it in my brake rotors, in my chain or anything like that. Like I said, it got washed off several times on the ride anyway with all the rain. Um, but the transition area was a muddy mess. And by the time I got back, um, I ride in and you come in on the other side of transition. So I left my shoes on my bike and I just carried it. And luckily, on the downside of transition, where I showed you the picture, it was not muddy because they had this nice sidewalk area. So I ran up it and able to cut in into the transition area to go rack my bike. So I didn't have to walk through the mud to get my bike there. But once I put my shoes on and everything, it was a mud pit getting out of here. I'd never. It was insane. So when you exit the transition area, it was a huge, nasty mud pit right at the top of transition. Like I said, I wish I could put the pictures on their Facebook and everything, but just go to the Facebook page. You can see all the pictures of the mud and everything. But overall, I kind of like the run course. See if we can pull it up so you can see if my elevation profile looks a little bit better on this one. So total of 1,000 feet. So if you look at their map, total of 793. So it's a little bit more in line with possibly what was going on. But I mean, see this nice little area here along the lake here on the sidewalk. It was nice and flat. I kind of felt my groove on the second lap. The first lap, it just kind of was getting my legs underneath me, so I couldn't really get a full feel for that flat area there at the lake. Yeah, don't pay attention to my heart rate again because I was definitely not running 130 beats a minute there in the middle. The rain was kind of causing problems with that, me personally. But it was I liked it because there's basically, the back area back here was like single trail track area. It was kind of interesting. There's a cross country trail system back here. Felt like we were running cross country when we first started the first lap because it was pouring rain. There's puddles everywhere. It felt like running through cross country, mud and muck and puddles and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's kind of funny. But once you start the run, you come out of transition. If you're not covered in mud when it's raining so much, it was nice because it's nice and flat. You come here and you're running around the lake, and it is pretty much flat as a pancake until you get back to the other side to run up the hill towards the first turn. So it was nice to kind of get your legs in you. They had some nice aid stations. They had like built-in restrooms. They had porta potties, everything you possibly want. If you want some privacy to go to the bathroom, you want to feel comfortable or something like that. So the first loop, it pretty much for me, it was still kind of raining and stuff, so there's puddles everywhere. So it was nice because you get to wash your shoes off from transition. But I digress about that. So it was kind of nice. You come through and you run through this little intersection here is busy and hopping, and basically it kind of kept spirited up the whole time. You're running along the sidewalk. There's a FedEx Center or something like that, and people were like eating lunch, and it's kind of a little bit a nice little kind of a country club kind of feel to it. So it's kind of fun running by this open air area, and people were eating lunch and just hanging out like it was nothing. They were kind of staring at us like we were weird people running on the sidewalk. So that's kind of interesting. But running through when you hit this first turn, there's tons of people. It's a nice steep hill. So running through, there's people on the hill. They're cheering you on. It's all good stuff. So here, and when you get to like what are we looking at, mile 2-ish or something like that. You know, you got 1, 2, so somewhere before 3. So between 2 and 3, you kind of hit the single trail, and there's not that many people. There's a little aid station here, so it's kind of a little bit desolate on this kind of backstretch here, which, you know, it's kind of nice if you kind of need to collect yourself or something like that. And then back here, you had some nice up and downs coming through this little section. And then when you meet the trail again, some of the triathlon clubs have set up tents and everything. So that was kind of nice. You run through here and you got kind of a group and people to kind of cheer you on and keep you going. And then we get through this drive. It's a nice little downhill. And then you come in, and this intersection, there's a lot going on. You got a left turn, you got a right turn, and you got a straight through. Basically, you did not cross any run path whatsoever, so they did a good job with that. So again, you come through cheering people, whatever, and you come over and you hit this little trail. This little turn here, they had the St. Jude kind of hill. They had like tear jerking, you know, posters and everything of children that St. Jude's helped and their mottos and all this kind of stuff. Probably good placement. It was a nice little rough hill. So when you run that and you come back over here, which, interestingly enough, if you look, you do loop. It's interesting. I don't know if this is a change or not. You run through this little loop. So just be aware of that. You run through this little loop. You come over. You run around. And my GPS didn't look like I picked it up very well, but you come through and you run through the little loop. It's got a little aid station. So the aid station is more like over here. So this map isn't entirely accurate. But you run over here and you come, and it's a nice downhill to either start your second loop or to come over and cross over the finish line. So it's kind of nice to come through. You can kind of see my pace. You know, I kind of picked it up there towards the end just to run through to the finish line. But it's all paved trails. It's all concrete. It was in pretty good shape. There's a few little spots where you kind of had to watch your footing and stuff. But if it wasn't for the rain, it'd have been totally fine. There's places over here, and especially in the back area and the low areas, it was just covered in water. So if you're worried about, in my socks, I put Aquaphor because I knew, because it was raining, I knew my socks were going to be wet. I wanted to wear socks on the run, especially in the half Ironman distance. So I basically just doused the inside of my sock and squished it around with Aquaphor, and then put them in my shoe. And then when I put them on, I had the Aquaphor in there because I knew there would be water, there might be chafing, and you just had to make sure that you were prepared to. Your feet were going to be wet no matter what, either with sweat or you're running through all these puddles. So you just had to be prepared for that. So who knows if it'll rain that much again during this race, but just be prepared. If it is going to be raining on the run, you're going to be running through, your feet all wet. Use something in your socks to help with the lubrication and everything, so you don't end up with blisters. I didn't have any blisters, didn't have any problems after the race with that. Basically, didn't have any chafing except for, I don't know if you can see this little spot where my zipper kind of caught me here on the run area. So that was the biggest problem I guess I had. But overall, I think I had a good run. The second loop, like I said, I kind of picked it up. I was feeling good. I knew where the hills were. I knew I could kind of run in a little bit, and where I needed to take it easy, I knew where the hills were at. But basically, you know, like I said, there's no monster hills. So you come through in the first part here, you're kind of going up, 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 and then you have this little hill here, and you're kind of in the back section here, nothing too crazy or whatever. Notice there are a few this little section here, it's kind of a steep up and down. On the backside, you're kind of going down, and then you had like a little bitty climb going up, and then down, 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 and then you turn around, and it is a little bit of an uphill. It's gradual, so you don't notice it as much, and then it's nice downhill, and then you're around the lake, and you do that loop again. Overall, yeah, I wouldn't say there's any monster. You know, the only big climb is this little section right here. So if you can see the cursor going, this is the only real climb where people kind of had to walk in on the second loop, and it was a little bit of a challenge. I jogged it out and, you know, made it work. But that'd be the one place where you kind of need to watch out or anything like that. To, you know, a steep climb or something like that might give you a little bit of a problem. But overall, you know, that's kind of my race. You know, in general, like I said, I wished I could have done a little bit better on the bike. And I got my dog here. She wanted some attention while I'm doing the little recap here. I'd highly recommend this race. I think it was good. it's a single transition race. I think they did the best they could with the rain. I don't think they thought it through very well with the parking um, over here off a farm road, because that field, I guess it's a soccer field, and it was a mud pit. Luckily, I had 4-wheel drive. I was able to get out without a problem, but a lot of people were stuck. Traffic control kind of failed a little bit on that one because they couldn't park people there. So um, I think from this year they'll come up with maybe a contingency plan if the weather doesn't cooperate as much. I don't know. Transition was a mud pit after the race. The where you go to get the where you're at for the briefing, this little walkway area, it was a mud pit. Um, Once you got in and got your food, it was fine, but just walking through, your shoes were just a muddy, mucky mess. Um, it Hopefully they've learned a lesson from a rain event like this, and I don't know if they'll just roll the dice and they'll keep having it here. I'd imagine there's going to be a little bit of negotiation for replanning this entire area and transition area, because it was a mess. It was muddy. It was gross. It was a mess. I carried my bike everywhere. Carried it through parking lot to my truck and getting out. But overall, had the rain not been a problem, I think this would have been a great race. The weather, it was like, I think, low 80s, but when it was raining, it really wasn't a problem. I think that was maybe the saving grace, but had it been sunny in the 80s, it had been pretty humid. I mean, you can kind of see the steam in the air when it did stop raining, but it was just so thick and soupy in the air. But being in October, I think it was a little bit cool and wasn't as much of a problem. So I think the timing was good for it, and I think the event venue is good. I stayed in La Quinta Inn. There was about 12-15 minute drive without traffic, and I wouldn't recommend that on La Quinta Inn necessarily, but there's plenty of places to stay that are close to the race, close to the venue. The one big tip is for check-in, and if you do the practice swim, park in the expo parking lot. Don't park in athlete parking and then walk, because it's going to be a hike unless you ride your bike in or something like that for drop off. Um, but I would recommend the practice swim. I'd recommend just being there as much as possible. It's a good venue, good event. There's places for there's shelters that people were hanging out while it was raining. So it's got structures already built there. It's kind of infrastructure already there. So it's not like it's in a field in the middle of nowhere and you have nowhere to go and nothing to do. You could have came there and, I guess, left if you needed to, if your family needed to. Trying to get there during the event might have been a problem, especially with the parking lot the way it was. Um, so it's kind of dicey. If you came there with your family and they stayed there during the day, I think there's places they can go, things they can do. There's food trucks kind of in the park that they park there. There's different little playgrounds and stuff. But overall, like I said, I think they did a good job pulling it off. They did have to delay for 30 minutes because of the weather. You parked, but I would highly recommend it. For me, it was like I said, an 8-hour drive. I don't know if I would. I'm not gonna just jump on doing this event again because it wasn't, things like 70.3 Des Moines. It's a 3-hour drive versus this is an 8-hour drive, or Boulder 70.3, which is a 7-8 hour drive. But the drive for me, I had to take more than half was on kind of 2-lane roads, kind of through, it was on, I believe, 63, Highway 63, going through Missouri, Arkansas, and then Tennessee. Whereas if I go to 70.3 Boulder from Kansas City, it's I-70, basically a straight shot. And I just set the cruise control and I go. This one, I got poured on. I was driving at night. It got foggy. It was an intense drive home. So for me, travel-wise, it might not be on my radar in the future necessarily, just because it was kind of tough, especially 70.3. Usually I get them done. I like to drive home the same day and just be home and have it done. So I did that. But I got home kind of late and it was kind of tough. I had a hard time the next day after, kind of catching up with sleep and recovering and stuff. But I'm glad I went. I'm glad I did it. I like the event. I like the venue. I just wish it was closer. Maybe that was a big change. If you could just drag Memphis a little bit closer to Kansas City, we'd be all good to go. But if you're watching this, and thanks for watching all the way through. If you made it through the end, you're a warrior. Hopefully this review helped you out. Give it a thumbs up if it did. If you have any other questions, put them in the comments, and I'll add anything I can. But like I said, I think this was a great event. You can see on the athlete guide, this is where they had transition, and it was mud pit basically. So in the future, well, actually no, I take that back. This is the parking lot. this is where transition was kind of over here. So if it rains, it's going to be questionable, but I don't. Hopefully, you don't have this problem in the future. But with that, like I said, if there's any other questions or anything else about this race, I'll be doing more videos about it. I'll be updating some information on it that maybe stood out from doing the race and experiencing everything. So I'll go back and maybe update a few things. Probably talk about transition layout a little bit more, see if they change that or anything like that. Like I said, if you got any questions, put them in the comments. And happy training out there, and good luck.